What's going on, guys? Aaron from Top Tier Gaming here, and today I'm coming at you with my top 16 12th place Little Rock, Arkansas regional Generaider Runick deck. I felt like a mouthful for some reason. Yeah, this regional was actually 3 weeks ago, but of course I was on my 7-month break of no upload, so I didn't upload it. But now that I'm kind of getting back more into the swing of things, I do want to bring you guys this list because I think this deck is awesome. It's a deck I've been playing for a while now. I absolutely love the Generaider cards, and the Runick cards make it flow pretty well. Overall, I've had a lot of fun with the deck. In 12th place, while for me it's not great, like when I'm going to these regionals, I'm always trying to get the deck box or the mat and get top 4, top 8. But 12th place overall isn't bad. Like if you were going to a regional to get an invite, this deck would have done that, right? So I think it's worth the profile. There were overall 140 players. I've had my rounds on the screen for a while now, so you guys can see what I played against because I did save those. But yeah, 3 weeks ago, the only difference I think from 3 weeks ago to now is that I think the Fire King version was a little bit more popular. Like I think Fire King Snake Eye at least had some foot in the meta, whereas now I feel like it's mostly pure, even though Fire King does still exist. But besides that, to not take too much time, I do want to go ahead and get real quick into this profile because it is sort of a longer profile like all my regional lists are. Quick shout out to Steel Fox Games, my sponsor who helped me go to that event. Of course, all my friends that drove me. But with all that said, let's go ahead and get into this Generaider Runick deck profile. Alright, so now I'm going to go over my 40 card main deck, my 15 card extra deck, and my 15 card side deck, and go over my ratios, sort of what I've changed from the regional is 1 or 2 cards that I will explain, and sort of why I changed them so that the deck, I think it's better now than what I played at the regional, and I'm just sort of gonna explain the reasons I changed them and sort of the ratios and why I'm running what I'm running. Starting off with 3 Lopter. Lopter is essentially the 1 card starter for generators, and by 1 card starter I mean it gets you access to boss stage, which is very important because that is the key focal point of the Generaider package. So of course we're going to maximize him at 3 because he's just one of the better generators that isn't a brick and is still important, so that's good to know. Then we have 3 Vela. This is sort of the Generator monster that lets Generaider do what it does now. Before Photon Hypernova, before this card was released, Generators really didn't do a whole lot without outside help. Admittedly, I don't have too much experience with old Generaider before Vela, so I can't say for sure, but this is where you get most of your explosive plays, allowing you to go into multiple rank 9s, do hand loop things, have insane follow-up. She's truly just a phenomenal, insane custom card for the deck. Well, I don't want to say custom card because there are 2 cards in this deck that I will attribute the custom tag to. Vela is an amazing card, but I won't give her the custom tag. She is really awesome, and she unbricks your hands, which is great. So she's again one of those generators you want to max because she fixes your hand rather than bricks them. Now on to the very important one of generators. These are the ones I feel like you have to play. One is Mardell. Very obviously, the reason you have to play Mardell is because she is the card that gets you to boss stage, the most integral part of any generator strategy, and we are of course going to play the Mardell. 1 Hela, who originally when I was playing this deck in my first couple drafts and first month with the deck, or not even month, I'd say the first couple weeks, I didn't like Hela as much. I was almost questioning why people played her and thought there might be something better, and there were some unique things you could do with her, but I overall felt she wasn't needed. And then the more I played with the deck, I realized Hela is a very important key piece to the deck. She makes it to where your monstrosity is a 2 card combo that gets you to your F0 double hand rip, and then going second, she is absolutely phenomenal, essentially being just double levitate with monstrosity plays, and that's very important. So I do feel Hela is a very important piece, which to some people will be obvious, but there is definitely a timeline where I say you can take this card out. That is not, we're not in that timeline. I think Hela is absolutely mandatory in the package. And then the actual last level 9, I'm only playing 3, which I'll explain a little bit, but the last one is obviously Har. He is the end goal for the Generator package. There's no getting around running Har. He's very, very important. He's just the payoff for the generators, because he gives you essentially 2 interrupts in his forced monster send as well as his Omni Negate. Interestingly enough, his forced monster send is once per copy, not once per turn. So there are things you can do where you remove him from the board, bring him back with Hela, and he can do that again. But yeah, I don't play 4. Some people play a 4th one in either Utgarda or Nidhogg. and I was running on Nidhogg for a while. You don't actually need the attribute fixing for Monstrosity that badly, and running a fourth one of these can lead to even worse hands, especially going second. Like, I felt 3 of like truly bricks is enough. I mean, if you draw Vela with them, these aren't bricks, but you don't always have that. So yeah, I just think 3 is enough, and like every time I was playing Nidhogg or Udgarda and I'd go back to it because I felt 4 was where I needed to be, I would end up siding that card past game 1 every single time anyways, siding it out, and I was like, okay, there's no way I run this 4th one, and I just went with 3, and I think it's the way to go. I think 3 big names is more than enough. Next up is 3 Diviner. Not all generator lists, surprisingly, are on the triple Diviner. I don't know, I think Diviner is just insane for the deck because she is essentially another... Starter is a strong word, but she has a lot of options, and some of those are actually the Velas and the Lopters are fairies, so these actually do come up in situations to be sent. The most important thing is she can access a level 9, and she can do some other things as well. Also, one thing to note, now that I'm talking about this card, I want to mention, there's possibly a ban list coming out, and I don't know if I mentioned this in the intro or not, because I'm recording the deck profile first. But there is a ban list probably coming out soon. I'm recording this Thursday. I'm expecting a ban list like sometime in the next 2 weeks. And there are cards that could potentially be hit in this deck, and I want to explain those. I don't think Diviner is one of them. I'm just happen to be with Diviner right now that I'm talking. But yeah, I'll explain that when I get there. And then the most important aspect of her would definitely be the next card, which is Trius, the honorary Generator card. This card has so much synergy with Generator. Being level 9 is huge because he's essentially like, he turns Diviner into a level 9 extender that can do more than just that, but for now just like level 9 extender. And then this card also works as a crazy interrupt with Generator Boss Stage because Boss Stage puts out a lot of fairy tokens, allowing you to essentially use his pop effect on your opponent's turn. And it means seeing Diviner and combo is like so much better than anything else because you also get access to Trius. And then when you tribute Diviner, you can get the DD Sprite, which I wasn't running this at first. This is one of the changes from the regional. I was running Herald of Orange Light because it worked better with some extra deck combos that I had with runic spells, and Orange Light I felt was a good card, and DD Sprite, like, you don't really want to draw it, but after more testing, I think this card is completely fine to draw, and unless you go into Baron de Fleur lines, which I was sort of underestimating in my previous build at the regional where I wasn't playing it, but I would definitely play the DD Sprite and the Baron de Fleur. It is absolutely phenomenal to have that negate before your plays or end your board. With Baron to protect your boss stage, because people, you know, they do play Cosmic Cyclone. Alright, on to spells, which there are a lot of them. We are on the 3 boss stage, very obligatory. You want to maximize this. You want to maximize it so much, I'm on 4 boss stage with the Terraforming. Terraforming also bridges into your Runic engine, being able to search Fountain, right? But yeah, not much to say here. You want 3 boss stage. It is the most imperative thing in the deck. I will say one good thing about boss stage is that like your plays can get interrupted by hand traps and you can end like almost nowhere. And as long as you have boss stage, you can like essentially eat through 2 or 3 hand traps and still end somewhere pretty awesome, which I think makes the deck somewhat resilient to hand traps, and I do want to mention that. On to the first card in the engine that I would truly say is a custom card. The other one is in the extra deck. The one in the main deck that I'm just going to call like the most custom card in the deck is definitely the World Legacy Monstrosity. This card is so good. And like I would draw this going second, and it essentially, as long as it resolved, just kind of meant I won that game. Even like going second in a full Snake Eye board. If I was able to resolve Monstrosity and have like any amount of good runic spells, that board was getting broken, and it was bonkers all day, that regional. Going first or second, yeah, this card just does so much. Essentially emergency teleport for 2 level 9s from your deck and you don't negate their effects. And this is also insane with Vela because you essentially put her in grave. So you get 2 level 9s to make an Xyz and then Vela effect and essentially get another rank 9 Xyz. It does a lot of extending for the deck, and also make sure you get either early Hars to protect you from like Nibiru, get access to Hela for like double Enterblath near plays, and a lot of go second place too. Like, this card is phenomenal, definitely the most custom card in the deck, and it is searchable, which is nice, which I'll get to the extra deck to show you why it's searchable later. Then I played 1 Kujikiri Curse, and I took this out for a while after the regional and then added it back in, because there's no one card I actually want to play over this slot, and this card has been good in all my testing. I took it out because it felt like a random one of, but then the more I test, like, this one of feels really good, and I'm pretty happy playing it. Discarding something like Vela is like pretty big value because she's fine in graveyard to work as well. And the draw 2 is nice with runic spells, and you can actually like turn any runic spell into essentially destiny draw or like trade in with this card because you can make Sleipnir, send it off board. which also is like fine in the hand where you draw too many runic spells and you just need to activate more of them. Yeah, I really like the Kujikiri Curse. I think this is a fine one of, but technically this is definitely a flex spot you can play around with. I just felt like it needed to be engine and not non-engine, which is how I came to Kujikiri Curse, but you can do whatever you want with that slot. I do think you should test that card though, because it feels surprisingly good in the deck. Alright, on to the runic portion of the deck, which if anything gets hit on the upcoming ban list, it's this engine. I think there's a chance they put Runic Fountain from 2 to 1. That being said, I'm on 1 Fountain. So this deck, this is something that needs explanation because everyone who looks at this deck who has like, they don't really know what the goal of the deck is. They're always like, why aren't you playing 2 Fountain? This card exists for one purpose and one purpose only, and that's to like draw multiple cards turn 1, like 2 to 3. And then never have it again. Like, put it in graveyard, it's done, its usefulness is over, you activate boss stage, and that's your field spell for the rest of the game. You don't want to sit on this card. The only time you sit on this card is if you literally had 0 access to boss stage, and you couldn't get there, like, at all, and then you're just going to sit on Runic Fountain until you do. And that does come up every now and then, but that's not the goal. So only 1 Fountain. You don't ever want to like see multiple of this card. You don't even want to see this card unless you have other runic spells with it. But essentially it turns all your level 9 instant fusion extenders into pluses, which really helps going first or second. Make sure you get to where you need to go. And yeah. Then I am running just 13 runic spells, which is a pretty low number, but I'm going to go through these pretty fast because we should all know what the runic spells do. 3 Tip, 3 Freezing Curses. This is my favorite one because Hugin looks really silly on it, so yeah, 3 Freezing Curses. 3 Flashing Fire. I maxed both of these because, I mean, that's pretty obvious. They're the best at breaking boards. Only 2 Destruction because I decided to play a Dispelling over the third one. Dispelling actually comes up in this deck pretty heavily because you do a lot of hand looping turn 1. And your Generator extra deck monster actually makes them draw a card from their deck to their hand. So you turn Dispelling on turn 1, which actually makes it more than just like a mid interrupt. You can use it sort of to additionally hand loop your opponent, and this is where some of the discard 5 combos come up. Yeah, I really like the one Dispelling, and I choose to play it over Destruction. You could not play it and play it their Destruction though pretty easily. Lastly is 1 Slumber, just because it's a runic spell you can activate, which does come up to get better fountain draws. Also, it can protect from like Princess and Grave, so it's not useless. And then I have 4 pieces of non-engine, and they're pretty similar in usage, but I felt like these were just the best non-engine slots by a mile. You can't play that much non-engine in Runic, so I gave myself 4 slots, and it's the 3 Talents and the 1 Called by the Grave. I think this is pretty standard. Yeah, this is the non-engine that feels best for me over things like Nib and any like individual hand trap. Talents is just so good at going first or second. You're a hand loop deck, so if you do get hand trapped, especially in a spot where it doesn't matter, Talents look at hand is just usually nail in the coffin, like done. Like you get the best card out of their hand, continue hand looping. They're gonna start their turn with 1 to 2 cards, which you can actually sometimes discard on your opponent's turn, which is very funny. And yeah, Called By stops all the nasty hand traps. Obviously, in a deck playing Monstrosity, you really want to stop Ash Blossom from hitting that card. Like your Fountain doesn't want to get Ashed or Belled, so yeah, Called By is really good, and you have no hand trap, so this is never like adversely hurting you. Yeah, and this hits Princess and things. I think Called By was like, in any deck that isn't different, like my Paleo tier deck, I think you definitely want to be playing Called By this format, in my opinion. I think it's just really good. And yeah, Talents, bonkers all day. I remember it was being an insane card. Again, just going first, going second, really, really strong. That is it for the main deck. On to the extra deck, which I think does have some nifty stuff around it, and you can choose to play in a bunch of different ways. I think the extra deck looks different for people who are on Diviner as opposed to the people who aren't on Diviner, but even the like runic fusions end up looking different for some lists. 2 Sleipnir is pretty standard amongst all lists. This card is insane. It also ties the runic and Generator lore kind of together. Which for those unaware, I'm not going to explain it. There's actually some great videos on YouTube you can look up if you want to find it out, but Runic and Generator lore are actually linked, like they are supposed to be together, which I think is very cool. Anyway, Sleipnir is one of the best cards in the Runic package because he is level 9, so he's just an extender. I think that's simple enough. He can also chain block your boss stage, which comes up sometimes, but you need to be careful of that because you don't always want to clog your monster zone up with something like a Runic token as opposed to a Generator token. But yeah, double Sleipnir. And then I am on 1 Moonin in the main deck, and I'm playing this over Gary. The reason I play it over Gary is you actually want the level 3. So Gary is good if you run like evenly matched in the side because he can make any runic spell a way to bait and negate essentially. Also with the DD Sprite, you can make level 5 synchros. But I want Moonin much more than that because I want, just in case Diviner gets impermed or something, right? If Diviner gets interrupted and you don't run Moonin, you don't do anything with the Diviner, which I think is awful. But if you run Moonin, you're able to access your level 5 synchro, and then any other runic spell is just like full combo. So personally, I like running Moonin, and I think you have to run this card anyways in a runic deck, either in the main or side. So by running it in the main, I clear up a side deck spot, so that's really strong. And yeah, Moonin was actually really good at the regional. I remember one time I had him on field, and my opponent Nightmare Phoenix my field spell, and I was able to use Moonin's secret ability to negate and destroy the Nightmare Phoenix, which was funny. And then Hugin, this card comes up just to get Fountain, simple enough. It also can protect your cards, which I used a couple times. It's rare in this deck because your EMZ is usually taken, but yeah, it's good to know that you can use Hugin to protect. On to the bulk of the extra deck, which is the Xyz monsters. That's the main reason to be playing this deck, are the Xyz monsters. And the second card of the entire list that I will use the word custom to describe is Levitain. This card is so good. This is my favorite card in the deck by far. It's actually insane. This card feels a lot like Madolche Tiramisu, where I feel like it is so many years ahead of its time because it is so good at clearing boards. It's not only good at clearing boards, it's an amazing interrupt that's really hard to deal with for Snake Eye especially. I think this is really good against Snake Eye. So if you don't know what it does, essentially you tribute it as cost on a quick effect, which is insane because it means you play around so much, except for like Called by the Grave. And then you can take cards from either field or either graveyard and attach it under a non-fairy Generaider Xyz that you special summon from your extra deck, which, spoiler alert, will be Jormungandr because he's the only one. And that's really good. And he's not once per turn. Like, you can only control one of him, but he's not once per turn. So I often, going second, would make 2 of these and just take my opponent's entire board and sometimes cards in their graveyard, like Princess or Garunix, things like that. Garunix was like pretty relevant at this regional because I feel like when I went to this regional, the Fire King version was still pretty popular. And yeah, this card is bonkers. Like, some people play 1 of this and I think that is like blasphemous because I was going through 2 at the regional constantly as like the best board breaker in the deck. And yeah, this card is truly insane. Definitely the reason to play the deck in my opinion. Then 2 Jormungandr. This is what you're making with a Levitain, so bare minimum you have to play as many as you play Levitain. But there are combos where you make this guy going first, which I will have a combo video up on the channel. So stay tuned for that, because people are going to be asking for the combos, and yeah, I will be making a separate video. But yeah, this card has, like, his effect you don't want to use willy-nilly because it's not a good effect giving your opponent an extra card. But as long as you're gaining more value from it, like turn 1, it's fine to use. If you need to see plays, it can be fine to use. There are ways that I think you just need to practice with this deck to find the ways to utilize this card where you're not helping your opponent win the game. It's a very, like, risky card to use, but there are some times where you need to, and times where it actually benefits you. 2 Enter Blathnir, one of the main extra deck combos involves 2 of this card, so you are playing 2. He's like an integral part of the hand loop. And then you often turn those 2 Enter Blathnirs, or just an Enter Blathnir and a Jormungandr, into the Utopic Future, which turns into Draco Future, which just gives you a monster negate, which is really strong because not only is this card kind of crazy, it's a very good card into Fire King, I feel like. It also protects your boss stage from Ash, which is very relevant. Or Ogre, if someone's playing that. Now, the level 5 synchro I've been alluding to that most people have probably figured out, but in case you haven't, it is the Ib. This card's very strong in this deck because Runic spells plus Diviner essentially leads you here, which searches your World Legacy monstrosity, which gets you into like full combo. Yeah, you do want the Ib. This came up, I feel, more in my Herald of Orange Light build. However, I feel like overall, without the Orange Light, the deck was better. So you summon this less when you're on DD Sprite because I'm not playing the Gary. Overall, I think it's fine. Like, this card still comes up when Diviner gets negated, which is often because, I mean, it's a 1-card starter for Voiceless Voice, so people are kind of afraid of it. And yeah, this card is really strong. It's one of the best cards in the deck for sure. Last synchro is Barone, which you can make with the DD Sprite very obviously because you're running like 58 level 9s essentially in your deck, and you can just summon Sleipnir with DD Sprite, synchro. You can use the Trius you bring out to make, essentially Diviner is 1-card Baron, which is pretty good, because then it can like fix all your plays. But often I like to leave Trius and not synchro with them, so I'll try to synchro with like Sleipnir instead or any other Generator card, because Trius Engrave is very good, but yeah, being able to make Baron, obviously strong. And the last card is SP Little Knight. This is the only generic like thing you can link off to if you talents take your opponent's monster, which I think is pretty important. Also, it's just like a decent board breaking card that comes up every now and then. So if you don't have SP, maybe you just play Donner. I think Donner's pretty good if you don't have SP. It's just something you can link your opponent's monsters into and then still be like a board breaker. Because you are playing talents, I think that's important. 4 generator tokens because we're on generator, and then I had a Trickstar token to be my Runick token because there is no Runick token, and then option token was my Nib token because I don't have a Nib token and that card's expensive. On to the side deck. I remember I tested quite a few things with this side deck, and I think the side deck was solid. It is kind of hard to side in this deck overall though because you have a lot of engine. It gets kind of rough to side out. I will probably put like my side options in the hand test video because I usually do that as like a how to play. So if you want to know my side patterns, again, stay tuned for that video. 3 Ash Blossom because it wasn't in the main. This is for Branded and Labyrinth, and this came in quite a few times. Also, if you're playing against like an FTK deck, like it's worth siding this in just so you have something to not lose. So even like Dark World where this card's not very good, I'd probably side it in. The Bestial Magnamute and Double Druis Worm. At the regional, one of these was a Baldrake, and I just decided that wasn't worth it, and I'm just playing 2 Druis instead. The idea with Baldrake is that you can draw it with another Bestial, and it's pretty nice. Or you can actually like tribute Diviner with it in weird situations. But Druis Worm overall is just like the better board breaker when you draw by itself, so I'd rather play it like this. But I do like Bestials again for like Labyrinth and Branded. Like the Puppet Lock is really tough for this deck. Next up is 3 Forbidden Droplet, which I think makes a lot of sense because we're on Runick. This card is historically good in Runick because you can activate Runick spells as like extenders or board breakers and then just send them away for free. You have cards like Vela for like that are just fine in graveyard, so you can get a lot of value off this card really easily. I remember this card was pretty valuable. It was pretty strong all day. I think playing this in Runick is totally fine. And then 3 Evenly Match, which admittedly was a little weird. I don't play a lot of Runick decks. Runick isn't a strategy I play often because I really like having a battle phase. So this card was weird for me to kind of get used to. I remember testing leading up to the event because you do have to play it differently with Runick spells. But overall, I think it was fine. In fact, I had one game at the regional, which won't come up in this current list I'm showing you because I don't play Orange Light, but my opponent had 11 cards on the field, 5 back row, 5 monsters, and a field spell. And one of them was an adventure token. This was versus my adventure Phantom Knight player. And he had adventure token and 10 other cards on field. I activated Evenly Match. He chained the Griffin, and I orange lighted the Griffin, and I banished 10 cards, or I guess 9 cards with Evenly Matched, and he had to keep the token. That was disgusting. That's the best Evenly story I've ever had. That was gross. I got like 3 Fogblade out the way, the adventure package, the Horus field spell. Yeah, I felt pretty gross after that, but it was pretty amazing. Best Evenly ever. And the go first side of my choice was Anti-Spell. I feel like Summon Limit isn't good with boss stage, and it can get really weird, although you could choose to play Summon Limit over this, I guess. You actually don't need spells that often past your turn 1, so Anti-Spell is like totally fine. And the best thing about Floodgates in this deck is you can make Jormungandr and use his effect to draw and then just slurp up the Floodgate you have on your board. Kind of like how Snake Eye does it with Diabellstar and they just send it, but yeah, I think that's really nifty. Anti-Spell was amazing as my go first card. This card probably should be hit. And maybe on this ban list coming up it is. Like, that'd be nice. And yeah, that's going to do it for the deck profile. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, subscribe. Any comments you leave down below, I'll be sure to answer. This is a deck I enjoy quite fondly. I don't even know if you can use those words together in a sentence. That's horrible. But yeah, feel free to leave your comments down below. I'll respond to them. And yeah, this has been Aaron from Top Tier Gaming. Bye, YouTube.